A block of mature cheddar costs less than a fancy coffee, yet it can turn a plain supper into something that feels like dining out. For anyone cooking for one, cheese is the great equalizer. Cheap, filling, and quietly luxurious. Tonight we are counting down 25 British cheese dinners that cost pennies but taste like a treat. Meals you can make in a single pan, with no waste and no fuss. From bubbling rarebit to creamy cauliflower cheese, each one proves that eating alone never has to mean eating poorly. Stick around, because number one is the dish that tastes like a restaurant, but costs barely a pound. Let us begin our countdown with number 25. Number 25. The cheese and tomato omelette is the fastest luxury in any British kitchen, ready before the kettle has even boiled. 3 eggs cost about 30 pence, a handful of grated cheddar, perhaps 20 more, and a sliced tomato turns the whole thing into something that looks like it belongs in a hotel. The trick is patience. Melt a knob of butter in a small pan over a low flame, pour in the beaten eggs, and let them set slowly while you scatter the cheese across the top. Fold it over just as the center stays soft, and the cheese melts into golden ribbons inside. The smell of butter and warm cheddar fills a quiet kitchen in seconds. For one person, it is the perfect portion. No leftovers, no waste. And it costs under 50 pence to make something that tastes like Sunday brunch on a Tuesday night. Number 24. A proper cheese and chutney toastie is the supper that hides a feast between 2 slices of bread. Many people forgot how good this could be, settling for cold cheese slapped on plastic bread. But take a thick slice of bloomer, butter the outside, layer mature cheddar inside with a generous spoon of pickle or onion chutney, and press it in a dry frying pan until the bread turns deep gold and the cheese oozes from the edges. The chutney does the magic, its sweet sharpness cutting through the rich cheese the way it does on a ploughman's plate. A loaf costs around £1 and gives a dozen slices. A jar of chutney lasts for weeks, and a block of cheddar stretches across many meals. For barely 30 pence a serving, you get a crunch and a pull of cheese that no shop-bought sandwich can match. Number 23. Cheese on a crumpet is one of those small British pleasures that feels far grander than its price. A packet of 6 crumpets costs less than £1, and a single one, toasted until crisp at the edges, becomes the base for a supper of real comfort. Toast the crumpet first, then pile grated cheese on top with a few sliced mushrooms softened in butter, and slide it under the grill until it bubbles and browns. The cheese seeps down into every hole, so each bite holds a pocket of molten cheddar. The earthy mushrooms and the slightly chewy crumpet make it feel like something you would pay good money for in a cafe. For one person, 2 crumpets are plenty, and the whole plate comes in well under £1, warm and savory on a cold evening when nobody feels like cooking properly. Number 22. Wensleydale and apple is the supper that needs no cooking at all, yet tastes like the inside of a country pub. The Yorkshire classic pairs crumbly white Wensleydale with crisp slices of eating apple, and for a fuller meal, you simply add buttered wholemeal bread, a few walnuts, and a spoon of chutney on the side. The cheese is mild and slightly sweet, almost milky, and the apple gives a fresh snap that wakes up the whole plate. It was the cheese that fruitcake was made to sit beside, and the saying went that an apple pie without the cheese was like a kiss without the squeeze. A wedge of Wensleydale costs around £2 and feeds several suppers. For an evening when the oven feels like too much effort, this cold plate is elegant, effortless, and kind on both the budget and the stomach. Number 21. Cheese scones with a bowl of soup turn a humble lunch into a proper sit-down meal. Homemade scones cost almost nothing, just flour, butter, a little baking powder, and a fistful of grated cheddar rubbed through until the dough holds together. 6 scones bake in 15 minutes and freeze beautifully, so one person can pull a single one out whenever the mood strikes. Split one while still warm, spread it thick with butter that melts straight in, and dunk it into a mug of tomato soup or leek and potato soup. The cheese in the dough keeps the scones savory and rich, and the steam rising from the bowl makes even a quiet kitchen feel like a tea room. The whole batch costs under £1. It is the kind of meal that warms the hands as much as the stomach, perfect for a grey afternoon alone. Number 20, cheese and onion champ, is the Irish and Welsh comfort dish that costs pennies and eats like a banquet. Boil a couple of potatoes until soft, mash them with a splash of warm milk and a generous knob of butter, then stir through a handful of finely chopped spring onions and a fistful of grated cheddar until the whole thing turns golden and creamy. The cheese melts into the hot mash, the onions give a gentle bite, and a well in the center filled with more butter makes it feel almost wickedly indulgent. For one person, a single large potato is plenty, and the cost barely scrapes past 40 pence. It was the supper that fed whole families through hard winters, and it remains one of the most soothing things a person can eat alone, soft and rich and warm right to the last spoonful. Number 19. A jacket potato loaded with cheese is the original cheap luxury, and it has never stopped earning its place. One large baking potato costs around 25 pence, and an hour in the oven turns it into a crisp-skinned parcel with a fluffy white middle. Split it open while it steams, push in a knob of butter, and pile mature cheddar on top so it melts straight into the soft flesh. Add a spoon of beans, a few snipped chives, or a scatter of crispy onions, and you have a meal that fills the whole plate and the whole evening. The contrast of crunchy skin and molten cheese is what makes it feel special. For a senior cooking alone, it asks almost nothing, just a potato and a little patience, and rewards with one of the most satisfying suppers in British home cooking. Number 18. Stilton on toast is blue cheese given the rarebit treatment, and it tastes like something served at a fine restaurant. A small wedge of Stilton goes a remarkably long way, its rich, tangy flavor so strong that a little crumbled over hot buttered toast is enough to transform the whole slice. For an even better version, mash the Stilton with a spoon of crème fraîche and a grind of pepper. Spread it thick across toasted granary bread and slide it under the grill until it bubbles and turns golden at the edges. A drizzle of honey or a few slices of pear on top lifts it into pure indulgence. The smell alone fills the kitchen with something celebratory. At under 50 pence a serving, it proves that the most luxurious cheese in Britain can also be one of the most affordable suppers going. Number 17. The cheese and leek pasty wraps a warm filling in golden pastry and feels like a meal worth saving up for, though it costs almost nothing. Soften a sliced leek gently in butter until sweet and silky, stir through grated Caerphilly or cheddar, and a little white sauce, then fold the lot into a circle of short crust pastry and crimp the edge. 20 minutes in the oven turns it deep gold, and the steam that escapes when you break it open carries the sweet smell of leek and melted cheese. It is the kind of food Welsh miners once carried down the pit, hearty enough to fill a working man, yet rich enough to feel like a treat. One pasty makes a generous supper for one, and a homemade batch of 4 costs little more than a single shop. Bought one. Number 16. Cheese-stuffed mushrooms make a starter feel like a main and a cheap ingredient feel expensive. Large flat field mushrooms cost around £1 for a small punnet, and each one becomes a little dish in its own right. Remove the stalk. Fill the cup with a mixture of soft cheese, grated cheddar, breadcrumbs, and a little garlic. Then bake until the cheese turns molten and the breadcrumbs crisp up golden on top. The mushroom releases its own dark, savory juices as it cooks, soaking up into the filling so every bite is rich and earthy. 2 or 3 on a plate with a slice of crusty bread to mop up the juices make a proper supper for one. It looks like something off a bistro menu, smells incredible while it bakes, and costs barely 50 pence to put together. Number 15. Stilton rarebit takes the great Welsh classic and gives it a luxurious twist that costs surprisingly little. Where ordinary rarebit uses cheddar, this version blends crumbled Stilton with a splash of milk or ale, a spoon of mustard, and an egg yolk, cooked gently until smooth, then spread thick on toast and grilled until it blisters. The blue cheese deepens everything, giving a savory, almost meaty richness that clings to the back of the throat. A little goes far, so even a small wedge stretches across several suppers. The smell of melting blue cheese fills the kitchen with something grand and old-fashioned, the sort of dish served in paneled dining rooms a century ago. For one person, it is the work of 5 minutes, and it turns 2 slices of bread and a scrap of cheese into a supper. Fit for a banquet. Number 14. Cheese and potato cakes are the clever way to turn yesterday's leftovers into today's treat. Cold mashed potato, a handful of grated cheese, a chopped spring onion, and a spoon of flour come together into soft patties that fry up crisp and golden in a little butter. The outside crackles, the inside stays fluffy and laced with melted cheese, and a few minutes in the pan fills the kitchen with a smell like a fairground. They cost almost nothing, using up potato that might otherwise be thrown away, and 3 or 4 make a generous plate for one. Serve them with a fried egg on top or a spoon of beans on the side, and you have a supper that feels like a proper fry-up. It is thrift and indulgence in the same mouthful, the sort of cooking that turns scarcity into something genuinely delicious. Number 13. Glamorgan sausages are the Welsh vegetarian classic that taste far richer than their humble ingredients suggest. Despite the name, there is no meat in them at all. Instead, grated Caerphilly or cheddar is mixed with breadcrumbs, a softened leek, a little mustard, and an egg to bind, then rolled into small sausages coated in more crumbs and fried until golden and crisp. The outside crunches, the inside stays soft and cheesy, and the leek gives a gentle sweetness all the way through. They were born of wartime thrift, when meat was scarce and cheese stretched further, and they remain one of the cheapest suppers in the British repertoire. For one person, 3 or 4 sausages with a spoon of chutney and a few boiled potatoes make a plate that costs under £1, yet tastes like something cooked with real care and craft. Number 12. The Leek and Caerphilly gratin is a dish that smells of a proper Sunday, even on a weekday evening. Soften sliced leeks in butter until they collapse into silk. Lay them in a small dish, pour over a simple cheese sauce, and top with a thick blanket of grated Caerphilly before baking until the top turns bubbling and brown. The leeks grow sweet and tender, the sauce binds everything in creamy richness, and the cheese forms a golden crust that crackles under the spoon. It is the kind of dish that feels generous and warming, the steam fogging the kitchen window the way a good supper always did. A couple of leeks cost under £1, and a single portion baked in a ramekin makes a self-contained meal for one. Served with crusty bread, it tastes like something from a country kitchen, rich and unhurried. Number 11. Stilton and broccoli soup is the supper that drinks like velvet and costs like water. A head of broccoli, a potato, an onion, and a small wedge of Stilton simmered together in stock, and then blitzed smooth, make a soup of extraordinary richness for very little money. The blue cheese melts into the green broccoli, turning the whole pot deep and savory, while the potato gives it a body thick enough to coat the spoon. A swirl of cream and a few extra crumbles of Stilton on top make it look like something from a restaurant menu. A big pot costs under £2 and gives several portions, so one person can freeze the rest in single servings for the days ahead. Warm, restorative, and quietly luxurious, it is the kind of bowl that makes a cold evening feel a great deal kinder. Number 10. Cheese and onion pie is the proper sit-down supper that wraps comfort in golden pastry. Sliced onions, cooked slowly until sweet and soft, are mixed with plenty of grated cheddar and a little mustard, then sealed between 2 layers of short crust and baked until the top turns deep, glossy gold. When you cut into it, the steam carries the sweet smell of onion and the rich tang of melted cheese, and the filling stays moist and generous all the way to the crust. It was a Lancashire favourite, the sort of pie that fed working families for pennies, and it remains one of the most satisfying cheap meals in Britain. Made in a small dish, it gives a senior several suppers from one bake, each slice reheating beautifully. With a few buttered peas alongside, it eats like a proper Sunday dinner at a fraction of the cost. Number 9. Welsh rarebit made properly is one of the great unsung luxuries of British cooking. Forget plain cheese on toast. Real rarebit means melting grated cheddar with a splash of ale or milk, a spoon of mustard, a dash of Worcestershire sauce, and an egg yolk until it forms a thick, glossy paste, then spreading it on toast and grilling it until it blisters and bubbles. The result is savory, tangy, and impossibly rich, with a depth that plain melted cheese simply cannot reach. It has graced grand tables for centuries, yet costs barely 40 pence a serving to make at home. The smell as it bubbles under the grill fills the whole kitchen with something warm and inviting. For one person, it is quick, filling, and deeply comforting, the sort of supper that tastes like it took far more effort and money than it ever truly did. Number 8. Macaroni cheese is the king of cheap luxury, the dish that turns flour, milk, and cheese into pure comfort. A handful of pasta, a simple sauce of butter, flour, and milk, and a generous fistful of mature cheddar come together into something creamy and golden that fills the whole kitchen with its smell. For one person, a small dish baked with a crisp breadcrumb top gives a supper that feels indulgent, yet costs well under £1. The trick is plenty of cheese and a good grind of pepper, with perhaps a little English mustard stirred into the sauce to sharpen it. Some add a few slices of tomato on top, browning sweet under the grill. It is the meal people remember from childhood, warm and rich and endlessly satisfying, and it remains just as comforting eaten alone at a quiet kitchen table on a cold night. Number 7. Cauliflower cheese. Served as a meal in its own right, is one of the coziest suppers a person can make. A whole cauliflower costs around 80 pence and breaks into florets that, once boiled until just tender, soak up a rich cheese sauce like little sponges. Pour the sauce over, top with extra grated cheddar, and bake until the surface turns deep gold and the edges crisp into lacy brown. The smell of bubbling cheese fills the house, and the contrast of soft cauliflower and crunchy top makes every forkful interesting. It was once only a side dish beside the Sunday roast, but a generous bowlful with a slice of crusty bread makes a complete and comforting meal for one. The leftovers reheat beautifully the next day. Cheap, warming, and rich enough to feel like a treat, it is thrift dressed up in its Sunday best. Number 6. Savory cheese and onion bread pudding is the clever way to turn stale bread into a supper that feels like a roast. Layer torn slices of day-old bread in a dish with plenty of grated cheese and softened onions. Pour over a savory custard of egg and milk, and bake until it puffs up golden and sets into something between a souffle and a quiche. The bread soaks up the custard and turns soft inside while crisping on top, and the cheese melts through every layer. It costs almost nothing, rescuing bread that would otherwise be thrown away, and a small dish gives a senior 2 generous suppers. The smell as it bakes is warm and savory, like Sunday breakfast and Sunday dinner rolled into one. It is the sort of resourceful cooking that British kitchens have always done best, turning scraps into something genuinely worth sitting down for. Number 5. The twice-baked cheese souffle sounds like something only a chef would attempt, yet it is forgiving, cheap, and utterly impressive. A simple souffle mixture of cheese sauce and whisked egg whites is baked once in a ramekin, allowed to sink, then turned out and baked a second time with a little cream and extra cheese poured over. The second bake makes it rise again, light as air, with a molten, cheesy middle and a crisp, golden top. The beauty for one person is that it can be made ahead and finished whenever you like, so there is no last-minute panic. It costs perhaps 60 pence to make, yet looks and tastes like a dish from a smart restaurant. The moment of pride as it puffs up in the oven is worth the small effort alone. It is proof that luxury is far more about technique than money. Number 4. Cheese and potato pie is the northern classic that feels like a hug on a plate. Boiled potatoes are mashed with butter and milk, stirred through with a mountain of grated cheese and softened onion, then piled into a dish, forked into peaks, and baked until the top turns crisp and golden brown. The inside stays creamy and rich, the top crackles, and the smell of baking cheese and potato fills the whole house. It was a staple of Lancashire tables, cheap enough to feed a crowd through hard times, and it remains one of the most comforting suppers in Britain. For one person, a small dish gives 2 hearty meals, the second reheating just as well as the first. Served with a spoon of baked beans or pickled red cabbage, it is filling, warming, and deeply satisfying. The kind of food that asks for very little and gives a great deal back. Number 3. The Croque Madame is the French cafe classic that any British kitchen can make for pennies, and it eats like a proper night out. Build a toasted sandwich of ham and cheese, coat the top in a thin cheese sauce, grill it until bubbling and golden. Then crown the whole thing with a fried egg, its yolk left soft and glossy. When you cut in, the yolk runs down into the melted cheese, and the crisp bread soaks up the richness. It is decadent, savory, and surprisingly cheap, using little more than bread, cheese, a slice of ham, and an egg. For one person, it makes a complete and rather glamorous supper, the sort of thing served in pavement cafes for a small fortune. At home, it costs barely £1, and the moment that yolk breaks across the melting cheese feels like pure indulgence. Number 2, the Stilton and pear gratin is the supper that tastes like a dinner party pudding turned savory, rich and elegant in equal measure. Halved pears are laid in a small dish, dotted with crumbled Stilton, drizzled with a little cream and honey, and baked until the cheese melts into the soft, sweet fruit, and the top turns golden and bubbling. The contrast of the tangy blue cheese against the sweet, tender pear is the kind of pairing fine restaurants charge a fortune for, yet a single pear and a scrap of Stilton cost barely 50 pence. Served with a few walnuts and a slice of warm bread, it makes a light but luxurious supper for one. The smell of honey and melting blue cheese fills the kitchen with something special. It is proof that the grandest flavors in British cooking are often the cheapest, if only you know how to put them together. Number 1, and finally, in first place, baked melting cheese with crusty bread is the dish that tastes like a restaurant, but costs barely more than £1. Take a small, whole, soft cheese, a baby camembert, or a little Welsh brie, score the top, push in a sliver of garlic and a sprig of rosemary, and bake it in its box, or a small dish, until the whole thing turns molten and oozing. Then simply tear hunks of warm, crusty bread and dip them into the bubbling, golden center. There is nothing quite like that first pull of melted cheese stretching from the dish, the smell of garlic and warm bread filling the kitchen. It feels like an occasion, the sort of indulgent sharing plate served in smart bistros. Yet a small cheese costs little and makes a complete and joyful supper for one. It is the perfect ending to our list, simple, generous, and gloriously luxurious. The finest things, after all, were always the simplest. There you have it. 25 cheap British cheese dinners that prove cooking for one can still feel like a treat. Try just one this week and see if your kitchen does not feel a little warmer for it. Which one are you reaching for first? Let me know in the comments below.